Hi everyone. I wanted to step away from the normal guide videos for this weekend to take a critical look at the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Next weekend I'll be releasing a 7.2 guide and I'll be working on Mythic Plus guides moving forward, especially with these new affixes. As most know, we have a bad reputation in the community as being a bad tank. I've heard people complaining about not healing us just because they hate the class. I've been playing Vengeance since they were released, so this video consists of my observations and log comparisons with other classes. With that being said, this is my opinion and you may agree or disagree with my assessment. My first complaint deals with the complexity of the class. Vengeance Demon Hunters are very complex with a large number of buttons. This is not an issue by itself. I actually enjoy this aspect of it. I like having a large number of buttons that provide situations where I have to think about what to use and when to use it. The problem is we must play well to even come close to competing with easier tanks while cheesing our own mechanics. I have the mindset that harder skill cap characters should slightly outperform lower skill cap champions, or have some sort of edge, like some reason to play the class and play it well. The issue is, even if we play to our peak performance, we are still outclassed by easier played tanks. On the list of best tanks, it normally plays out like this: Druid, Monk, Paladin, Warrior, Demon Hunter, Death Knight. The last three spots can alternate, but I've never seen a Demon Hunter ranked above the 5th slot on any tank list. I rolled 4 tanks to 110 this X-Pack: Demon Hunter, Paladin, Death Knight, and Monk. I wanted to have some sort of backup tank just in case Demon Hunter falters on a mythic fight. I gave up on my Paladin and Death Knight for different reasons early in Legion. However, I rolled the Monk because I knew they were rated as the second best tank in the X-Pack. They also had high mobility, a lot like the Demon Hunter, and I really appreciate that. I was able to get my Brewmaster up to 893 eye level and 41 AP points before I decided to quit because he was, in all honesty, very boring. There wasn't enough to do on him in any encounter. So instead of complaining for the sake of complaining, let's take a look at the Monk. Alright, so here's my Brewmaster. This is going to be short. The whole idea is I want to show you what the second tank, what their rotation is, and then I want to compare it to what we have to do. So quickly going over the talents so I can show you that I'm using the rating talents. This is Eye of the Tiger passive, that's not, well, it's irrelevant for the raid. Black Ox Brew is refreshes the cooldown of your Iron Skin Brew and your Purifying Brew. This row here is irrelevant for raids. 75, if this is a magic heavy fight, you would use this passive. Otherwise, you would use the Healing Elixir, which is a heal, which will passively proc when your HP drops under 35%, or you can just use it. Special Delivery is another passive, and then Blackout Combo is the only thing that quote-unquote spices up the rotation. So the normal rotation is you would open up with your Exploding Keg, which is a minute and 25-second cooldown. This is your artifact ability. So you'd cast this on the pole, followed by a Keg Smash. And then you would Blackout Combo Fire Breath, Blackout Combo Punch, Blackout Combo Keg Smash. Then you would Punch, Blackout Combo Punch, Blackout Combo Breath. And this is it. This is the entire rotation. And you just spam these 4 buttons, and then every minute and 25 seconds you use your artifact ability. Now when you're doing this, you want to keep up your Iron Skin brews, which is off the global CD, so you can spam your DPS abilities as you're using your brews. And your brews is your active mitigation. So right now I'm at 23 seconds of active mitigation, and it's permanently up. When you're in raids, you can have, my highest was like 2 minutes and 10 seconds worth of active mitigation. So when Spellblade goes to cast, say, Annihilation, you have no other button to push. You already have your damage mitigation up. Now the only difference is if your stagger gets too high, you would Purify it. So the hardest thing to learn as a Brewmaster Monk is when to use Purify. Other than that, it is this 4-button rotation. and this is the second best tank. Alright, let's take a look at the Demon Hunter. Alright, so now we're back on the Demon Hunter. The Brewmaster rotation was 4 buttons, maybe 5 if you count the minute and 25-second cooldown exploding keg. For Demon Hunter, just on the pull alone to maximize your damage, you're looking at 7 abilities on the pull. And I've talked about this before. We open up if you're not using concentrated sigils, talent-wise. So if you're not using concentrated sigils, you're going to be opening up with a Flame Sigil, followed by Inferno Slam, followed by a Fiery Brand, into an Immolate, into a Soul Carver, into a Fell Eruption if you're running Fell Eruption for a single target. If you're running Flame Crash, then this is one less button you have to use. Followed by Spirit Bomb, and if you're not using Spirit Bomb, then you'll be using Fell Devastation at the same time period. So anywhere between 6 or 7 buttons you'll be using just on the pull. So quick talent wise, we're looking at Razor Spikes, Fallout, or Burning Alive. Either two is fine. Fell Eruption or Flame Crash, Fracture, Quicken Sigils, or you could use Concentrated Sigils, Spirit Bomb or Fell Dev, and then Soul Barrier. So on the pull alone, we precast our Sigil, then we leap in, then we do our 6 to 7 button rotation. So while we're here, we have to watch our pain. We have to also watch our soul fragments. So we have 2 resources we have to watch, on top of just cooldowns. So the normal rotation is to keep your Immolate off on cooldown, to keep your Infernal Slam on cooldown, to keep the boss debuffed with Frailty from Spirit Bomb, or Fell Dev on cooldown, and your Flame Sigil on cooldown. So let's get them all on cooldown. And your Soul Carver on cooldown. Alright, so now everything's in cooldown, so the normal rotation is you pop Razor Spikes, then Fracture, and then if you need a heal, you Soul Cleave. So basically, at any point we have to decide when to either use Fracture for damage, or Soul Cleave to heal. And remember that Soul Cleave uses 60 pain, anywhere between 30 to 60 pain, so if you're at high pain when you Soul Cleave, you lost all that pain that you would normally use for Fracture, and Fracture is superior damage. Then also for AoE is different. If we have more than 3 targets, we have to decide whether to spam our Spirit Bomb for damage if you're running Spirit Bomb, or Soul Cleave for heal and damage. Now for defensive, we saw with the Monk, we used the Iron Skin Brew, and you had that up the entire time. For Demon Hunters, we have to pick whether or not we need to mitigate magic or physical damage. So for physical damage, we have to use Demon Spikes, which is 2 charges. Right now is a 13.2 second cooldown because of my haste. Or Empowered Wars, which is a 20 second cooldown. So the Monk has permanent active mitigation. We have to pick when to use our mitigation. Besides that, we have to pick when we want to heal ourselves or when we want to do damage. So the other topic, well, the main other issue I have with this design is that Demon Hunters are forced to sacrifice survivability just to do our damage. For instance, our Fiery Brand that we open with is our biggest cooldown that we have. This is a 40% damage reduction. However, it also does 445,000 fire damage. It also opens the Fiery Demise window, which increases the fire damage we do. So this is our hardest hitting ability and opens up a window for us to do even more damage. So on most fights, we can't hang on to this till when we need it. We have to use it on cooldown to get our damage even close to other tanks. With Razor Spikes, increases our physical damage by 30%. We have to use Demon Spikes on cooldown to increase the damage we do with Shear Soul Cleave, and Fracture. Fracture is almost always our highest DPS in a raid, unless it's an AoE fight. So we have to use Demon Spike. So if I'm off tanking, taking 0 damage, I still have to use my defensive cooldown to pull as much damage as possible to even compete with the other tanks. And then we have Empowered Wards. Now, based on our artifact ability, we have Siphon Power. This gives us up to 15% more agility for 10 seconds based on how much magic damage is mitigated by Empowered Wards. Which means to even come close to do damage, we have to quote-unquote scumbag ourselves. Meaning that if a if a magic ability is coming out, we purposely go and stand in it with Empowered Wards just to trigger Siphon Power. As a raid leader since Molten Core, this really bothers me, because I've been training and teaching people for 12 plus years to stay out of bad, to stay out of fire. But I find myself now purposely standing in fire or eating something I can easily dodge just to trigger Siphon Power, just to increase my damage to compete with other people. So say I use it, I get my damage up, and then another big shot's coming, healer dies, I'm almost dead, and I go to use it inside cooldown because I already used it for damage and now I'm dead. So all 3 abilities, our Fiery Brand, our Demon Spikes, and our Empowered Wards, that are all of our defensive cooldowns minus meta, is used on cooldown just for damage. I have a huge problem with this because looking at the Monk, they have permanent 100% uptime of active mitigation that costs them nothing. It's off global cooldown. You can spam your DPS abilities and off the GCD keep popping Iron Skin Brews. Alright, so let's take a look at a couple other things. Alright, so let's run this video up with some other small tweaks that we need, and let's talk about what we can do or what needs to be done to fix our current state. Right now, our largest weakness is our inability to mitigate consistent magic damage. This can be seen with Crosis. It can be seen in 5-mans, the first boss in Maul of Souls, that Dark Slash. If it's a plus 18 Tyrannical, you will not have Empowered Wards up for every Dark Slash. And if you don't have any cooldowns, you will either die or come close to dying. Thankfully in 7.2 we are getting a passive 10% magic damage damage reduction increase. So that's a small step in the right direction. Other than that, the biggest issue this class has is from pure design. The design that they use is not ideal. There could be a lot of different ways to look at this. We have, and I hate to say this because I actually like it like this, but we have too many buttons. The opening rotation is either 6 buttons to 7 buttons, depending if you take Failure Eruption. And then you also have your Shear, you have Soul Cleave, you have Fracture, you have other cooldowns like Soul Barrier that I didn't talk about. You have your Sigil of Silence, Sigil of Misery. If you're in Mythic Plus, you can run Sigil of Chains. These are all buttons that we have to hit. Or Interrupt, of course, or Taunt. Those are basic. If you're a Blood Elf, you have Arcane Torrent. So you're looking at a handful of keybinds you should have. There's so many keys that I have not bound in Prison yet. I don't PvP, so I don't use it very often, and I don't run that many Mythic Pluses. But this is a keybind I should have by now. But I have so many other buttons I have to use just for the normal rotation. Plus any unused trinkets like Archimonde's Hatred, and potions, and all these different buttons. Like I said, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I enjoy it because I'm not bored playing it. The problem is when you use this 10, 12 button rotation, and you're still underperforming the 5, 6, 7 button rotation monk if you add in the brews, or the druid, who's the top tank right now. It just doesn't pay off. And then the fact that we have to sacrifice our defensive cooldowns even when we're not actually tanking to maximize our offensive prowess, that's another issue. So if I was a designer, as of right now, without gutting the class, there's a couple things I would change. And again, this is my opinion. If you don't agree, then please feel free to talk about it in the comments. I'm more than happy to talk about it. The first thing I would do is I would take the 40% damage reduction away from Fiery Brand. I would treat this like a damage cooldown that opens a damage window. Excuse me. So I would take the defensive opponent or component out of that. Then I would probably take the Empower Wards, the magic reduction, and tie it into Demon Spikes. That way we have our damage mitigation in one button. This is kind of boring, but that would open up our Empower Wards to take the Fiery Brand defensive and have it be the 40% damage reduction. Now the whole idea of Fiery Brand is the damage is only mitigated from the person with the debuff, but you could treat it the same way. Empower Wards, you can call it something else. You throw the debuff on a target. If you use Burning Alive, it can spread to other targets. Done. Now, with the 2 charges of Demon Spikes, you would also have 2 charges of Empowered Wards. So outside of that, the other changes that we would need is we need our damage increased. Like a flat damage increase. And then we need to nerf Siphon Power. The only reason why Demon Hunters are coming close to competing in Nighthold is simply because we abuse Siphon Power. On Mythic Crosis, there's 5 stacks of Syrian Brandons, and ideally as a tank we should be using Empower Wards when we have 5 stacks to mitigate the most amount of damage. But we don't. We use it when there's 1 stack or maybe 2 stacks. That way we can get the full increase of Siphon Power, then it'll come back off cooldown faster and we can use it more times in the fight. More times in the fight equals more damage. Like, we are hurting ourselves just to increase our damage to compete. It's not good. So we need to nerf Siphon Power because it's honestly really overpowered. So nerf Siphon Power, give us a flat damage increase. Make it so Razor Spikes is just remove it. Just get it away from our cooldown, our defensive cooldown. Just give us a flat 30%. Like, you can tie this damage increase together. Just get rid of Razor Spikes, put in something else there. The whole idea is we need to untangle our defensive cooldowns away from our offensive capabilities. Other than that, Fracture should be baseline. This ability is too good. Like, if you're not running it, I'm gonna question as to why you're not running it. You'd use Soul Rending during Necrotic, but other than that, you should almost always use Fracture unless you're a brand new tank. The damage, the Soul Fragment generation, just how it works with all your other abilities is great. And the last thing I would change is Soul Cleave. The 30 to 60 pain is not a good design. There's times when I need heals and I'm over 60 pain that I have to Soul Cleave, and I just blew all my pain that could have been used for damage. So Soul Cleave should have some sort of base pain cost, and just like take your healing and the damage done by it and just make it all baseline. So instead of 30 to 60, make it 40 pain. This would allow you to do a static rotation, like assuming we still have Razor Spikes, you pop Razor Spikes, Fracture twice, you get those 4 fragments, and then you Soul Cleave. You're back down to 0 pain, you healed, and did damage. It's a nice balanced rotation. Alright, that's my viewpoint of our class. A lot of this won't matter if you're not a Mythic Raider. A lot of it is tweaking us so we can compete in the Mythic Nighthold and soon to be Tombless Sorceres. So the whole idea is we need something to get us on par with druids and monks and even paladins. And right now we're not seeing it. So if you disagree, please make a comment. Let me know what you think. Let's get some dialogue going. Let's have some conversations. Let's get some feedback. If you like what you heard, please like or subscribe. Otherwise, thank you for watching.